I never thought a long-sleeve shirt in July could keep a secret, but mine did, for 2 years. My name is Hannah, and this is the story of how one man, my uncle, the quiet one nobody ever expected much from, became the reason I'm still here to tell it. I was 17 when it started, not with a slap, not with anything you could point to and say, there, that's the moment it began. It started with silence, with my stepfather, Gary, coming home late, smelling like something sharp and bitter, and my mother pretending she didn't notice. It started with me learning which floorboards creaked, which doors to avoid slamming, which version of myself to become depending on the sound of his truck in the driveway. You learn to read a house like that, the way sailors read weather. I don't want to describe what happened in detail. I won't. Some things don't need pictures to hurt you, they just need to be known. What I'll say is this: by the time I turned 17, I owned exactly 4 long-sleeve shirts, and I wore them in 90-degree heat, and nobody at school asked why, because nobody at school was really looking. Except one person did look. He just didn't say anything for a long time. My Uncle Dale was my mother's older brother. He wasn't the kind of man who hugged you or told you he loved you out loud. He showed up instead. Fixed the leaking faucet nobody asked him to fix. Left a bag of groceries on the porch when he knew things were tight. He drove a beat-up green pickup that backfired every time he started it, and somehow that sound became, for me, the only sound in the world that meant safe. He'd come by on Sundays. Just to check on us, he'd say. My mother would smile that thin, tired smile she always gave him, and Gary would grunt something from the recliner, and Dale would sit at our kitchen table and ask me about school like my answers actually mattered to him. I loved those Sundays. I lived for those Sundays. But even Dale, sharp as he was, didn't see it. Not at first. I made sure of that. I was good at making sure of that. "You're quiet today, kiddo," he said one Sunday, maybe 8 months in. I was stacking dishes, keeping my back to him, my sleeve slipping just slightly at the wrist. "Just tired," I said. "Finals." He didn't push. He never pushed. That was the thing about Dale, he gave you room. I used to think that was kindness. Later, I understood it was patience. He was waiting for me to trust him enough to stop hiding. I wish I had trusted him sooner. I think about that more than almost anything else. All that time I could have had, safe, instead of scared. The thing about hiding pain for 2 years is that it doesn't just live on your skin. It moves inward. It changes how you laugh, how you flinch at raised voices, how you apologize for things that were never your fault. I became an expert at smallness, at taking up less space in every room I entered. I used to look at girls my age laughing loud in the school hallway, throwing their heads back like nothing in the world could touch them, and I'd feel this ache so deep it was almost physical, not jealousy exactly. Just grief. Grief for a version of me that might have existed, in some other life, in some other house. My mother knew. I need to say that clearly, because it's the part that still keeps me up some nights. She knew, and she chose the version of peace that meant looking away. I used to hate her for it. Now I mostly just feel tired when I think about her, a tired kind of sadness that doesn't have anywhere left to go. "Please," I told her once, maybe a year in, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please, can we go somewhere, just for a while?" She looked at me with an expression I've never been able to forget, not cruelty, not even indifference. Just fear, pure, paralyzed fear. "You don't understand what he'd do," she said. "Just keep your head down, baby, it'll pass." It didn't pass. It never passes. That's the lie they tell themselves, the ones who stay, that the storm will run out of rain eventually. By the 2nd year, I had stopped believing anyone was ever going to notice. I had built a version of myself so convincing that even I sometimes forgot what was underneath it. I smiled at the right times. I turned in my homework. I said, "I'm fine." So many times it stopped feeling like a lie and started feeling like a shield. Then came the Sunday in July. It was hot, the kind of heat that makes the air feel thick, and I'd made a mistake, a small, careless mistake. I'd rolled my sleeves up while doing dishes, just for a moment, just because the fabric was sticking to my skin and I wasn't thinking, I wasn't being careful, and Dale walked into the kitchen a second too early. I saw his face change. I saw the exact moment something in him went still. "Hannah," his voice came out low. careful, like he was talking to something that might bolt if he moved too fast. "What is that?" I yanked my sleeve down so fast I nearly knocked over a glass. "Nothing. I bumped into the—" "Hannah!" He said my name again, and this time there was something underneath it I'd never heard from him before. Not anger. Something closer to heartbreak. "It's nothing, Uncle Dale. Really. I'm clumsy, you know that, I'm always." "Look at me." I couldn't. I stood there with my hands shaking, staring at the soap bubbles in the sink like they might tell me what to do, what to say, how to make this moment disappear the way I'd made every other moment disappear for 2 straight years. He didn't yell. He didn't storm into the living room and confront Gary right then, though God knows a part of me almost wished he had. Instead, he did something so much quieter and so much more devastating. He walked over slow, and he put his hand, gentle, like he was afraid I might shatter, on my shoulder. "How long?" he said. Not a question, really. More like he already knew the answer and just needed to hear me say it out loud. I felt something crack open in my chest. 2 years of holding a door shut with my whole body, and one quiet question from a man in a flannel shirt smelling like motor oil and coffee just pushed it open. "Please don't say anything," I whispered. My eyes were burning. "Please, Uncle Dale, please, it'll only make it worse, he'll—" "Hannah," his hand tightened just slightly on my shoulder. "Look at me, please." I looked up, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't pity. It wasn't even just anger, though that was there too, simmering somewhere underneath. What I saw was a decision being made. A line being drawn, right there in our kitchen, between everything that had happened before and everything that was about to happen next. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't see that," he said quietly. "I can't do that, not anymore, not to you." "You don't understand," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded, how much it sounded like my mother's. "You don't know what he's like when—" "I know exactly what he's like," Dale said, and something in his voice made me stop. "I've known for a long time, I just didn't have proof. I didn't have anything I could actually do something with." The room felt like it tilted. "You knew." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, and behind him, through the kitchen doorway, I could hear the television droning in the living room, Gary's laugh rumbling low at something on the screen, completely unaware that his entire world was about to come apart. "Go pack a bag," Dale said finally. "Just the essentials. Don't let him see you doing it." "What? Why? Uncle Dale, what are you—" "Hannah." His eyes locked onto mine, steady, unshaking, more certain than I had ever seen him. "Tomorrow. I'm coming back tomorrow morning and everything is going to change. I promise you that. But tonight I need you to trust me, and I need you to pack a bag." I stood there in that kitchen, dish soap drying on my hands, my sleeve still damp where I'd rolled it up too carelessly. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something I almost didn't recognize anymore. Hope, terrifying, fragile hope. I had no idea what my uncle was planning. I had no idea that by tomorrow night, my entire life, every room I'd ever hidden in, every lie I'd ever told to protect a secret that was never mine to protect, would be gone. He left that night without another word, just squeezed my shoulder once more and told me to get some sleep, though sleep was the last thing my body was capable of. I lay in bed with my bag half-packed under it, staring at the ceiling, listening to Gary's footsteps creak past my door on his way to bed, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of the sound. I was counting down from it, counting down to whatever tomorrow was going to bring. I didn't know then what Dale had done that night. I only found out pieces of it later, stitched together from what he told me, and what my mother eventually admitted, and what came out in the weeks after. But here is what I know now. Dale drove straight from our house to the sheriff's office in the next town over, not ours, because he didn't trust the deputies who golfed with Gary on weekends. He sat with a detective named Ruiz for almost 2 hours, and he told her everything he'd noticed over 2 years that he'd never said out loud. The long sleeves in summer. The way I flinched at raised voices. The Sunday I'd shown up with a fading mark along my jaw that I'd explained away as walking into a cabinet door, and how he'd let it go because he didn't have proof, and hated himself a little for it every day since. I should have asked sooner, he told Ruiz, and later he told me the same thing, his voice cracking in a way I'd never heard from him before. I saw enough. I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. That night, he also called my mother's sister, Aunt Carol, who lived 2 hours away in a small house with an actual guest room and an actual dog that actually liked people. He didn't ask her if she'd take me in. He told her he was bringing me, and she didn't argue. The next morning, he came back to our house before Gary had even left for work. My mother answered the door in her robe, confusion turning to panic when she saw the detective standing behind him. "Dale, what is this? What's going on?" "Where's Hannah?" he said, and his voice didn't shake at all. I was already standing at the top of the stairs, my bag in my hand, my whole body trembling like a leaf caught in wind that couldn't decide which direction to blow. What happened next is a blur of raised voices and Gary coming down the hall in his undershirt, demanding to know what the hell was going on, and my mother crying in a way I'd never seen her cry before, not for me. I understood even then, but for the life she was watching collapse around her. The detective spoke calmly through all of it, explaining that there'd be an investigation, that I'd be staying somewhere safe in the meantime, that this was simply how the process worked. Gary's face went through something terrible when he realized what was happening. Not shame, not remorse, just rage, barely contained, the kind that made the detective step slightly in front of me without even seeming to think about it. "You don't know what you're doing," he said to Dale, low and dangerous. "You're going to ruin this family over some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Dale said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the whole hallway. "I've seen enough. I should have done something 2 years ago. I'm doing it now." I don't remember walking down those stairs. I remember Dale's hand finding mine at the bottom of them, steady in a way nothing in my life had been steady in longer than I could measure. I remember my mother reaching for me, and me stepping back, not out of cruelty, but because I simply didn't have anything left to give her in that moment. Not after 2 years of her looking the other way. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "Hannah, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to." "You knew," I said, and it was the first time I'd said it out loud to her face. "You knew, and you chose him. You chose staying quiet." I wasn't angry when I said it. I was just tired. Tired in the way that comes after holding something up with your bare hands for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like for your arms not to shake. The drive to Aunt Carol's felt like driving into a different world. Dale didn't fill the silence with empty reassurances. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, the radio low, occasionally glancing over at me like he was checking I was still real, still there, still breathing beside him. "You didn't have to believe me," I said somewhere around the halfway mark, staring out the window at fields blurring past. "Most people wouldn't have." "I didn't need you to tell me," he said. "I just needed you to let me see it. That's all I was ever waiting for." The investigation took months. I won't pretend the process was gentle or fast, because it wasn't. There were interviews and forms, and a caseworker named Denise who asked me questions in a small beige office that I answered as honestly as I could manage, my hands twisting in my lap the whole time. There were nights at Aunt Carol's when I woke up convinced I'd heard Gary's truck in the driveway, only to realize it was just the neighbor's car pulling in next door, and I'd lie there afterward with my heart hammering, relearning slowly what safety was even supposed to feel like. But there were other nights, too. Nights when Aunt Carol's dog, a scruffy old thing named Biscuit, would climb up onto the end of my bed and just stay there, warm and solid and uncomplicated. Nights when Dale would call just to ask how school was going, and mean it, and wait for the actual answer instead of the one I'd learned to give. Gary was eventually charged. I won't go into the details of what the court proceedings uncovered, because some of it isn't mine to share, and some of it I still find difficult to hold. What I'll say is that the truth, once it started coming out, didn't stop at just me. There had been warning signs before I ever arrived in that house, missed the same way mine had almost been missed. My mother didn't go to prison. She went to therapy, mandated at first, and then, slowly, by her own choosing. It took 2 more years before I was ready to sit across a table from her again. I'm not going to tell you it was some perfect, tearful reunion where everything was forgiven in an instant, because that's not how real healing works. It was slow. It was awkward. It was her apologizing in ways that felt insufficient, and me accepting those apologies in ways that felt incomplete. Both of us learning, clumsily, how to rebuild something that had been broken for longer than either of us wanted to admit. But Dale never wavered. Not once. He showed up to every single appointment, every hearing, every awkward Thanksgiving where the empty chair at the table said more than any of us could. He taught me how to drive in that same beat-up green truck, patient through every stall and jerky stop, laughing instead of getting frustrated. He was there when I opened my college acceptance letter, standing in Aunt Carol's kitchen with his arms crossed, trying so hard to look unbothered and failing completely, his eyes shining before I'd even finished reading it out loud. I asked him once, years later, why he never said anything sooner. Why it took that one moment in the kitchen, that one rolled-up sleeve, for everything to finally break open. He was quiet for a long moment before he answered. I think some part of me was scared that if I said something and I was wrong, I'd lose you, he said. And then, when I finally understood I might lose you if I didn't say something, that fear didn't matter anymore. Being wrong felt a lot better than being sorry. I'm 24 now. I have my own apartment, small and imperfect and entirely mine, with sunlight that comes through the kitchen window every morning around 7. I still keep long sleeves in my closet, but not because I'm hiding anything. Some of them are just soft, worn-in flannel, handed down from a man who taught me that love doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it just shows up. Sundays without fail. Waiting patiently for you to finally let it see you. I don't know where I'd be if Dale had looked away that afternoon in the kitchen, the way so many others had for 2 long years. I try not to imagine it. What I choose to remember instead is his hand on my shoulder, steady and warm, and the sound of his voice asking the only question that mattered. How long? Because sometimes, being truly seen by just one person who refuses to look away, is the exact thing that saves a life.